Hello and thanks for joining me today. In this video, I wanted to use this piano as an example of how in the body, it's not the problem that's the problem, it's the compensation to the problem that's the problem. Okay, so this piano I just had recently tuned, and as you can hear, it sounds pretty beautiful for the most part. So I'll play you a chord. Check this out. Right, a couple of chords there, it sounds really nice, right? And so the bottom of that, the base of it, the foundation is right here. Right, and then this is on top. I can change that, right? Now the relationship of this to this is nice. All the notes are in tune with each other, so it sounds pretty good. Right? That's all harmonious, and that's how things are supposed to work in the body, right? They all work together, everything's at the proper strength level, the proper length level, the proper flexibility, the proper pattern. Okay, so now listen to what happens when I play a note, which is supposed to be this note, but it's a little bit more out of tune, okay? And so you can hear that when I play this note, which is not quite this note, it's a little bit out of tune relative to the rest. It actually throws everything else off. And so that's actually okay to have that one note down there that's not working perfectly, because, you know, I don't have to rely upon that note in the context of playing this piano. Okay, so I can stay right up in here. And that's fine. But in the body, since everything is interdependent on each other and working at all times, that's often not the case. So you get a problem in one spot, let's say this spot, and now all your other parts of your body, all your other notes in this analogy would have to change their tuning to accommodate that, right? And so really the note you want is that. That's the true value of the note you want. But if this starts to try to change to accommodate around this and everything else change, then the relationship of everything will be off, because the notes will not be the true value that you want. And so we find that this happens a lot, especially when it comes to people that have problems in their face or their airway. And I'll use one example for you. So what I found recently, few cases, as of late, people are walking in the door with mid-back pain. Okay, and you do your exam on them, and you kind of go triage style with it, where you're finding which part of the body is hurt the worst, which area of testing is coming up the worst, and what ends up sticking out the most is, you know, jaw, head, and neck, even though their pain is in the mid-back. And so what's happened with these folks is their head has started to come forward and up like this, so they're extended up top, forward, down, low, flex down, low. And in order to get this head in the right spot, they've come up through their mid-back, okay? Instead of coming down, flexing at the top, and then coming back through this area and not extending through their mid-back, they've now compensated. And so they're starting to have pain where the compensation is and not where the actual problem is, which is somewhere up in the head, cranium, cervical spine. So that's just one example. And you can see this would get more and more complicated the more and more compensations you started bringing in. So let's say your mid-back starts to hurt, so then you're trying to take the load off that. All of a sudden you start using your low back and hips in a compensatory fashion for that, and then the levels of compensation stack upon each other, and at a certain point, if that results in pain, you're kind of stuck in that compensated state, and it's going to be a lot harder to get out of than just kind of working initially to not compensate, right? It would be better to have some sort of a problem. So for one example, a lot of times people are underdeveloped in this part of their face, and as a result their tongue doesn't have enough space. In order to create an airway, they bring their head forward and they open their mouth, okay, and they tip up in the upper part of the cervical spine, and those are all compensations there. So instead of extending at the mid-back in order to try to appear to have the right alignment, the move to do there is, even though it might be impinging on the airway a bit, learn how to tilt this way and come back so that this is aligned properly, undoing those initial compensations, and then dealing with the problem itself, which is not enough space back to front in your head. And so learning how to breathe with the feeling of a slightly impinged airway instead of doing those compensations to avoid the feeling of doing so. So that's just one example, and in another video upcoming I'm going to talk about, if that is the case, what are in fact the options for that, because I think it's becoming clearer and clearer to me that in some of those cases oral appliances are the best bet in terms of things you can use at night or as training tools to allow you to get that area of your body into a better position for a time while relieving the stress on the airway to take care of the compensations. So in order to detrain those compensations and retrain, so at least everything else is in the right relationship, or in more severe cases, maybe especially if you're younger, opting for a surgical intervention to change this dimension of the face so that you take away the root problem, right? Because if the root problem is gone, you have a really good chance of undoing those compensations. If the root problem persists, you're always going to be pushed back towards those compensations. And so remember, when you hurt, it's usually not the problem, it's the compensation. But sometimes you do have to fix the actual problem so that you don't have the tendency to compensate. So that's it. Key is keep this part of your piano in tune, even if one part is a little bit out. Don't compensate. Don't bring the rest of your body out of tune, the rest of your body's piano out of tune in order to compensate for a system that isn't functioning properly together, right? So that's it for today's video. If you like this one, like, comment, subscribe, all that sort of stuff, and I'll see you next time. Peace.